I never expected my life to change the way it did. But when I met Dominic, everything turned upside down. What happened between us was something I never thought I would experience, something no one would ever believe. He was older, wise, and far more experienced than I was. At first, I never thought much of him. He was just another neighbor. Until he wasn't. There's something about a person that can quietly change the course of your life without you even realizing it. One look, one conversation, and suddenly everything you thought you knew feels different. This is the story of how my life was altered by a man 28 years older than me, and how our connection stayed hidden until it couldn't anymore. What I thought was just a harmless friendship turned into something that would change everything. But no one could know. Not yet. At first, I thought I could keep things simple, keep my distance, and ignore the feelings stirring inside me. But life has a way of pulling you in, even when you're not ready. The day everything changed wasn't anything special, just an ordinary day. Until it wasn't. And it all started when I decided to visit him on a rainy evening. I was 22, and still hadn't figured out relationships or love. I felt different from my friends, who seemed to be living their lives so freely. I kept my distance from guys, scared of rejection, and I had never truly been in love before. It's not that I didn't want to meet someone, but every time I tried, something inside me held back. Maybe I was too afraid of getting hurt, or maybe I simply didn't know where to begin. I spent most of my time at home, alone with my thoughts, wondering what I was doing wrong. I was always the quiet one, the one who kept to herself. I watched my friends go on dates, fall in and out of love, and I couldn't help but feel left behind. But deep down, there was a part of me that wondered if I was meant for something more. Have you ever felt like you didn't quite fit in? Let me know in the comments below. Dominic wasn't like anyone I knew. He was 50, divorced, and a man of few words. He lived across the street, and I'd often catch glimpses of him working in his garden. I never thought much of him until one day something shifted. He wasn't flashy, or the kind of man who drew attention to himself. His hair was graying at the temples, and his face carried the marks of someone who had lived a full life and seen a great deal. I'd watch him in the mornings through my window as he tended to his garden. His movements were calm and precise, like he found solace in the simplicity of it all. There was something about him that made me curious. He didn't smile much or speak to many people, but whenever our eyes met, there was a strange intensity in his gaze. It was as if he could see right through me in a way no one else did. Yet at the same time, there was something distant about him, like he was guarding a part of himself. I'd watch him work alone, his hands steady as he pruned roses or pulled weeds from the flower beds. There was a certain grace in how he moved, an ease in the way he handled the earth and plants, as if he was deeply comfortable with the world around him in a way I couldn't quite understand. I'd tell myself it was just my imagination, that there was nothing special about him. He was just my neighbor, after all. But every time I saw him, I felt this quiet pull, this strange connection I couldn't explain. He was reserved, but there was something in his presence that made me feel seen, like I wasn't invisible, like maybe I mattered. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than what met the eye. And the more I watched, the more I realized I couldn't stop thinking about him, not just as a neighbor, but as something more. One day, I decided to walk over and say hello. I don't know what came over me. I had never been the type to approach someone so boldly, but that day something told me I had to. As I crossed the street, my heart was pounding. What was I even going to say? He was kneeling in his garden, tending to a patch of bright yellow flowers, and didn't notice me until I was just a few steps away. When he looked up, he smiled. "You like flowers?" he asked, brushing the dirt off his hands. His voice caught me off guard. It was deep but warm, and the way he looked at me, calm and curious, made me feel like I belonged there, like I wasn't intruding. I managed to nod, and we started talking. At first, it was just about the flowers. He told me they were marigolds, his late mother's favorite, and how they thrived in the sunlight this time of year. I listened, unsure why I was so captivated by his words, but there was something about the way he spoke, like every sentence carried a piece of his soul. As the days passed, that first conversation turned into many more. I'd find myself outside more often, wandering over to his garden just to say hello. He'd always greet me with a gentle smile, and soon it wasn't just about flowers anymore. He told me about his life, how he had grown up in a small town, worked hard to build something meaningful, and how he had been married once. He spoke about his ex-wife with respect, but also with a trace of sadness. Sometimes two people just grow apart, he said, even if they love each other. I don't know why I felt so comfortable with him, but before I knew it, I was sharing things I hadn't told anyone else. I told him about my fears of not fitting in, my struggles with feeling different from everyone around me, and my quiet loneliness. He listened, not just to respond, but to truly understand. His eyes never left mine, and when he spoke, his words felt like a balm to my insecurities. We started spending more time together. It wasn't planned, it just happened naturally. He invited me over for coffee one afternoon, and what should have been a quick visit turned into hours of conversation. We talked about everything and nothing, and I felt a connection growing between us. There was a quiet depth to Dominic that I couldn't ignore, a steadiness that made me feel safe. One rainy evening, he offered me an umbrella when I was caught outside without one. The simple gesture made my chest tighten in a way I didn't fully understand. Then there were the moments when our hands brushed as he passed me something, or the way he looked at me softly, as if he saw a part of me no one else ever had. With every conversation, I learned more about him, his heartbreaks, his resilience, and the wisdom he had gained through it all. But it wasn't just me who was opening up. I noticed how he began to smile more when I was around, how his voice softened when he spoke to me, and how he seemed different, lighter. It was as if something in him was changing too. I told myself it was just friendship, just a neighborly connection. But deep down, I knew it was more. I couldn't stop thinking about him, his words, his kindness, the way he made me feel seen in a way I never had before. And the more time we spent together, the harder it became to ignore what was quietly growing between us. I never meant for it to happen. I told myself we were just neighbors, just two people sharing conversations and moments of kindness. But life has a way of surprising you, but as time went on, I started to notice things, small, fleeting moments that felt like more than friendship. There were the lingering glances, the way his eyes would meet mine and hold just a second longer than usual. Or the way his voice softened when he said my name, like it carried a special meaning. And then there were the gentle touches, nothing bold, just a hand brushing against mine as he handed me a cup of tea, or his fingers lightly grazing my arm when he walked past. It was those small, unspoken moments that left me feeling something I wasn't sure how to describe. My heart would race, my breath would catch, and I'd find myself wondering if he felt it too. I knew it wasn't ordinary. He was so much older than me, a man who had lived a full life full of experiences I could barely imagine. And yet there was this quiet pull, this invisible thread that seemed to draw us closer every time we were together. But every time I felt it, I tried to push it away. I reminded myself of all the reasons why this couldn't happen, why it shouldn't happen. He was my neighbor, a man I barely knew a few months ago. The harder I tried to ignore it, the stronger it became. It was as if the air between us had changed, like every word, every smile carried a meaning I wasn't ready to face. And in those quiet moments when it was just the two of us, I couldn't help but wonder, did he feel it too? Have you ever been close to someone, but felt something unspoken between you? What did you do about it? Let me know in the comments below. It was a rainy night when everything changed, the kind of rain that felt endless, pounding against the windows, as if trying to drown out the chaos in my head. I had just fought with my parents, an argument so intense that I couldn't even remember what started it. All I knew was the feeling of being misunderstood and isolated, like I didn't belong in my own home. I couldn't stay there. The walls felt like they were closing in, and I needed air, space, anything to escape the weight of it all. Without thinking, I found myself running across the street, my feet splashing through puddles, the cold rain soaking through my clothes. Before I knew it, I was standing at Dominic's door, my fist hesitating for a moment before I knocked. When he opened the door, I must have looked like a mess, my hair plastered to my face, my eyes red from crying. But he didn't say a word. He just stepped aside and let me in, his expression calm, but filled with quiet concern. He handed me a towel, his movements gentle, and waited for me to speak. But I couldn't. The words wouldn't come. I broke down then, the tears spilling over as I stood there in the middle of his living room. And before I could stop myself, I was in his arms. He didn't pull away or ask questions. He just held me, his embrace steady and warm, as if he was anchoring me in that moment. I don't know how long we stayed like that, minutes or hours, time seemed to blur. But then something shifted. When I looked up at him, his eyes met mine, and there was something there I hadn't seen before, something that mirrored the storm I was feeling inside. What happened next felt like a dream. His touch was gentle, patient, and made me feel safe in a way I didn't know was possible. It wasn't just about the moment itself. It was about the emotions, the unspoken bond that had been quietly growing between us for so long. He was my first, and it was meaningful, not because it was perfect, but because it felt real. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and cared for. And in that moment, under the cover of rain and shadows, I knew everything had changed. I wasn't the same person I had been just hours before, and I knew I never would be again. The next morning, everything felt different. The air seemed heavier, the light streaming through the window sharper, as if the world itself had shifted overnight. I woke up with a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite name. Part of me felt alive in a way I never had before, as if I had unlocked a part of myself I didn't even know existed. But another part was filled with doubt, fear, and questions I wasn't ready to answer. Dominic and I hadn't said much as the night faded into morning. There was an understanding between us, unspoken but undeniable. We both knew the weight of what had happened, though neither of us could bring ourselves to say it out loud. As I left his house, I told myself I'd figure it out later, what it meant, what to do next. But the truth was, I had no idea where to start. How could I? What we shared was so far outside anything I had ever imagined for myself. It wasn't just the age difference, or the circumstances. It was the fact that for the first time, I had let someone see me completely. But as much as I wanted to keep it a secret, fate had other plans. I should have known it couldn't stay hidden. There are no secrets in a small town, not when people are always watching. At first, it was just whispers and passing glances from neighbors, a few awkward encounters at the grocery store. But soon the whispers turned into full-blown rumors. Before I knew it, the entire town was talking about us. Their judgment and curiosity felt suffocating. I didn't know who to turn to or how to face what was coming next. What we had shared in private was now on full display, and the consequences were more than I had ever imagined. As much as I wanted to believe we could keep our connection sacred, untouched by the outside world, I realized that wasn't possible. And the fallout was only just beginning. Leaving wasn't an easy choice. Every part of me wanted to stay, to hold on to the fragile connection Dominic and I had built. But I couldn't ignore the reality. The whispers had turned into stares, the stares into judgment, and the weight of it all had become unbearable. I knew I couldn't live like that, not for him, not for myself. Dominic wanted me to stay. He didn't say much, but the way he looked at me said everything. "We can get through this," he had said the night before, his voice steady, his eyes pleading. But I wasn't so sure. The town wasn't going to forget, and neither was I. The walls were closing in, and I needed air, space, something to help me figure out who I was and what I truly wanted. As I packed my things, my heart felt heavier with every item I folded and placed into the suitcase. Each piece was a reminder of the life I was leaving behind, the moments we'd shared and the future that now felt so uncertain. I wasn't just leaving the town. I was leaving him. And that thought hurt more than anything. When the moment came, he was there, standing at the edge of the driveway, as I loaded the last bag into the car. Our eyes met, and for a moment, it felt like the world stood still. There was so much I wanted to say, but the words wouldn't come. I saw the hurt in his eyes, the quiet resignation that came with knowing he couldn't stop me. And I hated myself for putting that look there. I gave him a small, trembling smile, hoping it would say everything I couldn't. Then I got in the car, started the engine, and drove away. With every mile that passed, I felt the weight lifting, but it was replaced by something else, uncertainty, longing, and the aching question of whether I had made the right choice. Leaving wasn't about running away from him. It was about finding myself, escaping the noise and figuring out what I wanted without anyone else's voice in my head. But as the town disappeared in the rearview mirror, I couldn't help but wonder, had I left behind the one thing I had been searching for all along? Life is full of moments that change us, define us, and leave marks we carry forever. For me, that moment was Dominic. He wasn't just someone who walked into my life. He was the person who made me feel things I never thought I could, someone who saw me when I couldn't see myself. But in the end, I had to walk away. As much as I cared for him, I realized that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes the weight of circumstances, the judgment of others, and the need to find yourself outweigh everything else. And that's okay. Sitting here now, looking back, I can't say I regret it. Dominic taught me more about myself than I ever could have learned on my own. He showed me that love isn't just about holding on, it's also about knowing when to let go. But now I find myself asking, did I do the right thing? Was it wrong to leave him like that? Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice or if I let fear guide me instead of my heart. What about you? Have you ever had a moment that changed your life completely, something you never saw coming? I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. It's moments like these that remind us we are not alone. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world to me and helps me bring more stories like this to you. Make sure you hit the bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.